Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Delano D'Souza. Coming up on the show this week. As the conflict between Israel and Hamas rages, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security warns of a heightened threat environment targeting Arabs, Muslims, and Jews. Argentina's economy minister comes out on top in the first round of the presidential vote. Sergio Massa's strong showing came despite inflation rising to triple digits under his watch. And Britney Spears' tell-all memoir, The Woman in Me, is out this week. It tells the story of a child star who became a global pop sensation and then suffered a meltdown in front of the world. Now, as the conflict between Israel and Hamas rages in Gaza, the number of hate crimes in the United States is on the rise. The Department of Homeland Security is warning of a heightened threat environment targeting Arabs, Muslims, and Jews in the near to medium term. Vigils have been taking place after a Palestinian American child was stabbed to death by his neighbor in Chicago. The man has since been charged with a hate crime. The Jewish community is also worried about the rise of anti-Semitism, even more so in Pittsburgh 5 years after a mass shooting in a synagogue. Fanny, Allard, and Wassim Cornet report.
Shawn Brokus is a former FBI agent. She was in charge of crisis management when the Tree of Life synagogue was attacked.
The squad I supervise actually owned that investigation.
Today, she works for the Jewish Federation of Pittsburgh by teaching the community how to deal with threats. That includes this group of preschool teachers and daycare supervisors who work at a Jewish school.
In a stressful situation, emergency situation, commit to act. Doesn't mean it's going to be the absolute right answer. There is no right answer, but as long as you're doing something and committing to action, that's going to help with survivability. Running is always best if you can run, but you may fall back to hiding right away, and especially as teachers, because it's not just each man for himself or each woman for herself. You have children. You're probably going to be holding hands or holding infants. That's totally fine. Just do what you can.
That scenario is hard to stomach for some.
It's hard. You guys have such a significant role because you're entrusted with the lives of children.
After an hour-long class, the teachers will now have to practice what they learned and lock themselves up in a classroom. Austin supervises 2 to 3-year-olds. She has to act as if an active shooter is in the building.
I realized there's a closet right here. So the best place to put the kids is probably on this wall.
Right? Because it's like a box of rocks. I would throw them all. Open up.
They pass with flying colors. Each year, 5,000 people get the same training in Pittsburgh alone.
It's a little hard just to listen to it and think about it, put yourself in that situation, but no, definitely not impossible. Very important.
Statistics show that possibility has continued to grow over the past 40 years.
It does not seem right that people are targeted just because of their religious views, but it's a reality. We're seeing threats so frequently. We need to make sure we're as safe and as protected as possible, because if somebody does bypass security or law enforcement can't respond immediately, it's up to each one of us to know that we can take care of ourselves.
Pittsburgh is home to some 50,000 Jewish people. That community was targeted on October 27, 2018, when a man opened fire at the Tree of Life synagogue. 11 people were killed and 6 others injured.
I'm Audrey Glickman. I was inside the Tree of Life building leading the service for a Tree of Life congregation when the shooter came in.
Audrey Glickman is one of the lucky ones. She's at this summit for the eradication of hate alongside families of victims. And after a 4-year wait, she can finally share her story.
I couldn't talk about the trial because I was a witness, and witnesses shouldn't talk about the case, the bad guy, or the trial itself, or potential punishments beforehand so that we don't risk a mistrial later.
The shooter was sentenced to death last August after he was found guilty of 63 federal crimes, including hate crime. It was the first federal capital punishment under Joe Biden.
This individual didn't take a gun and spray bullets into a crowd. This individual brutally murdered including blowing the heads off and blowing the faces off of each individual person that he killed. And he kept looking for more people to kill. Whether he's ever executed or not, he has been separated from the rest of society. And that, I think, is the reason for sentencing somebody to death, to cut them off cleanly from having any more influence with anybody.
Some of the victims from that day were laid to rest in the area. Those who belonged to New Light, one of the 3 congregations that were attacked, were buried here. Stephen Cohen manages the cemetery. He comes here at least once a week to pay tribute to his friends who were brutally murdered.
This is the monument that we erected to all 3 of our martyrs. I'd like to think that every time we say their name and we think about them, they live a little bit longer.
Anti-Semitism is not new, nor is it surprising for this Brooklyn-born Jewish man, but the synagogue attack was a moment of realization nonetheless.
My father wanted to become an engineer. He was refused admittance into any of the engineering schools because he was a Jew. We lived in a particular part of where we grew up simply because that was the only place where we could buy land. These type of things have occurred up until the end of World War II. And starting, I'd say, in the mid-50s, maybe into the 60s, things changed. We're all the same. Now we acknowledge the fact that to some, we are not.
The United States may be home to the largest Jewish community outside of Israel, but they haven't escaped the global increase in anti-Semitic acts. The Anti-Defamation League says it received reports of nearly 3,700 anti-Semitic incidents last year, the highest number yet, a number that could continue to grow with the crisis in the Middle East.
40, that's our number of the week. In the US, at least 40 states across the country are suing tech giant Meta over accusations its social platforms like Instagram are addictive and harmful to children's mental health. The lawsuit alleges that continued use of Instagram is linked to depression, anxiety, and insomnia in kids. Now, Argentina's economy minister came out on top in the first round of the presidential vote. Sergio Massa's strong showing came despite inflation rising to triple digits under his watch. In November, he'll be going head-to-head against populist Javier Milei, who's been billed as a mashup of Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, and Jair Bolsonaro. Here's a look at the economic proposals being put forward by both candidates.
A center-left Peronist on one side, an ultra-free market radical on the other. Sergio Massa and Javier Milei are both economists by training, but the two candidates are proposing very different solutions to Argentina's ongoing economic crisis. Argentina's inflation rate is reaching 140%. Milei blames current government policies for the problem and has vowed to scrap the central bank, reduce the size of the government, and implement steep spending cuts. But with 40% of the population living at the poverty level, such plans could backfire. Massa has made household aid a campaign priority, eliminating income tax for 800,000 households and removing VAT levies from basic goods. Argentina is mired in debt thanks to a 2018 government deal, $44 billion borrowed from the IMF that must be repaid. Massa wants to renegotiate the terms with an eye towards getting the debt canceled, while Milei says a drastic reduction in public spending, including cuts to social assistance and pension funds, is the way forward. Dollarization, Milei's main plan for stabilizing the economy. He wants to abandon the peso in favor of the American currency by 2025. It's a drastic measure that many economists consider extremely risky. With the central bank's foreign exchange reserves at record lows, such a move could plunge the country into even deeper debt. Massa is firmly against dollarization, preferring to allow the continued devaluation of Argentina's currency.
Now, the United States has temporarily lifted sanctions on Venezuela. It comes following the resumption of dialogue between the government and the opposition. The opposition's Maria Corina Machado, meanwhile, won the presidential primary. Washington has threatened sanctions would snap back if opposition figures like Machado are barred from holding office.
She clinched an overwhelming victory in the opposition's presidential primary over the weekend. But Venezuelan politician Maria Corina Machado now faces her biggest hurdle, asserting the legitimacy of her candidacy.
Anyone who raises the term disqualification is saying that what happened in Sunday's primary was worthless, that they don't recognize it. Well, I say to them, listen to the people. I received a mandate, and I'm going to fulfill the mandate of the Venezuelans.
The 56-year-old liberal politician has been barred from holding any public post for 15 years by President Nicolas Maduro's government, which has charged her with supporting international sanctions against the country. Maduro and his allies have spent months hindering opposition efforts to hold primary elections.
What happened this past Sunday was not an election, it was a sham, a scam.
While Maduro is expected to seek a third term next year, Machado has already declared herself the winner of Sunday's polling, pledging to end socialism and ushering in economic reforms. Meanwhile, Washington has threatened to roll back sanctions relief if Maduro's government fails to lift bans preventing opposition figures, including Machado, from holding office.
And it's our picture of the week next, and Britney Spears has released her tell-all memoir. The Woman in Me, out this week, tells a story of a child star who became a pop sensation and then suffered a meltdown in front of the world. In the book, Spears spills the beans on her relationship with Justin Timberlake, writing that he urged her to terminate a pregnancy when the pair were dating. She also details her relationship with Irish actor Colin Farrell, describing the brief but intense affair as a 2-week brawl. That's it for this edition of Inside the Americas. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.
Your stories inspire the future. Your daily lives create the news. Your cultures, struggles, and successes are at the heart of our programs. We tell the stories of those who made our planet and those who are building it. We tell the story of the world, shaped by the lives of those who live there.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.